The setting sun bled across the horizon, drenching the white city in fire and shadow. Smoke curled from the industrial district's chimneys, entwining with the rhythmic clang of metal and the mechanical heartbeat of factories. The streets, slick with recent rain, shimmered beneath the gaslights, their reflections twisting in the humid air. A storm was coming, not one of wind and rain, but of steel, fire, and death. Prince Chandler stood at the mouth of a narrow alley, half shrouded in shadow. His sword rested at his side, grip unwavering. The weight of a pistol pressed against his hip, a silent promise of violence. The deep reds and blacks of Ebonreach's military elite marked him even in the gloom, a pale crimson cape draped over his shoulders. Silver buttons glinted with each movement, boots pressing into the damp cobblestones as he shifted his stance. He inhaled slowly. He had fought beside Armand's witch hunters before, but the nerves never faded. Their enemy ensured that. Ahead, Armand and his witch hunters moved like wraiths, their coats, lined with steam-powered enhancements and arcane inscriptions, whispered with every step. Pistols and rifles gleamed beneath flickering lamplight, barrels carved with ancient runes. Some wore wide-brimmed hats adorned with exotic feathers, others brass goggles or gas masks, concealing their expressions but not the deadly intent in their posture. A few bore the signature zealot masks taken from fallen foes, beaked visages of plague doctors or the predatory contours of eagles, grisly reminders of their enemy's persistence. Armand lifted a communicator, his fingers tightening around the slender device laced with wind magic. The deep navy of his suit contrasted against the pale green of his vest, his white cravat crisp despite the city's filth. A silk ribbon, though stray locks, framed his sharp features, pulled dark auburn curls back. A strip of cloth covered his left eye, adding to the air of mystery that clung to him like a second skin. His baritone voice, low and edged with a mystery and lilt, slipped through the radio's static. Magus to Boulder. Status? A crackle. Then, Boulder to Magus. Secure. Armand nodded. Proceed. See copy. The moment stretched, an eternity balanced on the blade of a knife. Chandler tightened his grip on his sword hilt. 5 years of hunting zealots alongside Armand had forged an unspoken understanding between them, a long-standing alliance between Mystria and Ebonreach. Yet even now, unease coiled in his gut. 2 hunters flanked the building's entrance, a rotting structure, pipes hanging like ribs from its flayed walls. One struck a flint, igniting a smoke bomb before tossing it through a shattered window. It landed with a muted clink. Silence. Then, movement. Figures emerged from the darkness, pale masks gleaming in the dying light. Black robes, frayed and blood-stained, clung to their forms with contrasting white masks. Their gloves ended in steel talons, curling hungrily around the hilts of rapiers, axes, and whips. The trap fired. Ropes lashed through the air, snapping tight around limbs sent by an ethereal mechanism. A hunter lifted a hand. Vines erupted from his fingertips, ensnaring a zealot mid-stride. The man dissolved into shadow, slipping free, only to reform, body twisting unnaturally as the magic dragged him back into the world of flesh. More shadows poured from the building. The witch hunters opened fire, enchanted bullets striking their marks. Ice crackled, locking feet to the ground. A second wave surged forward, faster, stronger. The alley exploded into chaos, blades flashing, gunpowder thickening the air, and spells crackling like distant thunder. A zealot lunged. Chandler's blade met his in a shriek of steel. Clawed gloves sliced through the air. He ducked, pivoting. A knee to the ribs. A swift slash, his opponent crumpled. Another came at him. Chandler twisted, a rapier slicing through his coat. He lashed out, boot connecting with his assailant's chest, sending him sprawling. Without hesitation, he drove his sword home. The sickening give of flesh and bone vibrating up his arm. Armand lifted a hand, fingers curling in a sharp incantation. The air shivered, vines erupted, coiling around the remaining zealots like hungry serpents. The last of the cultists fell, their struggles swallowed by thorns and roots. Armand exhaled, a smirk playing at the edge of his lips. You have quite the knack for this, he mused. Chandler flicked blood from his blade. I'll take that as a compliment. The witch hunters moved in, binding the captured zealots with chains inscribed with glowing runes. One dissolved into mist, slipping free. Chandler's pistol fired. The bullet struck true, but the zealot faded, vanishing into the ether. Armand swore. Damn it! They're clones! He hesitated, jaw tight. I should have known. Chandler turned to him, unease prickling his spine. Clones? Armand's expression darkened. A spell I crafted for the Dark King, stolen before I could deliver it. His exhalation was sharp, controlled. That would explain their sudden increase in numbers. Chandler frowned. After 5 years of battle, this was the first he'd heard of it. His fingers flexed against his hilt. What else did he not know? The witch hunters reinforced their restraints. Chandler pulled his communicator from his belt. Targets eliminated. Stand down. Roger tat. Armand leaned against his cane, sapphire eye gleaming as he surveyed the battlefield. The alley, once quiet, was now littered with fallen zealots, magical residue clinging to the air like the remnants of a dream. He turned to Chandler, lips curling into something akin to amusement. Ebonreach's aid in Mystria's hunt for these zealots has been invaluable, he said. It's unfortunate they fled south when we were so close to eradicating Lucian's remaining followers. Chandler nodded, though his thoughts lingered on the unease in his chest. Ebonreach stands with Mystria. I only regret not being able to do more. Armand adjusted his cuffs. Speaking of, The golden jubilee of your father's reign begins tonight, and we've a dinner to attend. Chandler sheathed his sword. Let's not keep them waiting. The palace thrummed with celebration as twilight surrendered to night. Moonlight gilded the tallest spire in silver, while a crisp breeze carried the perfume of jasmine and freshly clipped grass through the open-air corridors. Inside, the grand hall pulsed with warmth and revelry. Chandeliers blazed with fire and magic, their golden light refracting through towering windows. Shadows flickered in time with laughter and the clink of goblets. The scent of spiced meats and honeyed wine thickened the air as musicians played a lively tune, drawing courtiers into effortless, swirling steps. At the heart of the feast, King Tiberius presided over the great table, his presence undiminished by the silver in his hair. His gaze swept the room, keen as ever, as he raised a goblet in salute to his guests. Beside him, Chandler sat with his wife Layla and their toddler Aiden. Further down, Marcus, his closest friend, smirked over the rim of his cup. Chandler, adorned in the regal trappings of his military rank, carried himself with an ease that belied the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He poured deep red wine into 2 glasses, sliding one to Marcus. Ready for the tournament tomorrow? His friend accepted it with a smirk, his presence no less commanding than that of the nobles surrounding them. The heritage of the Kalarim whispered through his features, the sun-bronzed complexion, the dreadlocks tied back with understated elegance, the scars that mapped his past like a history written in flesh. Marcus took a slow sip, his grin sharpening. Worried? Not in the slightest, Marcus chuckled. Then I'll enjoy watching you eat dirt when we meet in the final. Chandler clinked his glass against Marcus's. You wish. At the head of the table the king stood. Conversation faded, the room turning toward him in quiet anticipation. His voice, steady and sure, carried through the hall. 50 years have passed since I took the throne of Ebonreach. Some may say that is too long for any man to rule, but I tell you, every moment has been a privilege. You, my people, have given me the honor of guiding this kingdom, and for that, I am eternally grateful. Applause rippled through the gathering, sincere, an undertone of chuckles echoing underneath. The king's expression turned solemn. Tonight, we also honor our Mystrian allies. 5 years ago, darkness sought to claim this land, but together, we cast it down. Lucian's fall marked a new dawn for Mystria and Ebonreach alike, and we stand ever united. He lifted his goblet higher. Magus Armand, if you have words to share, I welcome them. Armand, seated at the king's right, inclined his head before rising. His Mystrian finery caught the light, rich embroidery, a single dark feather at his lapel. Leaning on his cane, he spoke with measured confidence. Your Majesty, it is an honor to stand here tonight. His gaze swept the hall. I share too a vision for the future. The completion of our research facility marks the dawn of an era where magic and technology will coexist, where innovation will serve both our peoples. Together, we build a future not of conquest, but of progress. A resounding cheer rose from the hall. Goblets lifted in approval. Tiberius raised his glass one last time. Then let us drink, to the years ahead, to unity, and to the legacy we leave behind. As the toast rang out, the night surged forward, music swelled, laughter wove through the notes, and the promise of fireworks and dance stretched into the hours to come. Then, over the revelry, the king's voice rang clear. The tournament shall commence at dawn, and in my honor, my son, the crown prince, shall enter the arena. Gasps rippled through the hall, followed by cheers. Chandler, mid-drink, nearly choked, not expecting the applause. Layla nudged his ribs as Marcus erupted into laughter. Armand leaned in, smirking. I'll be watching, my friend. Don't disappoint me. Chandler exhaled, setting his goblet down with a wry grin. I never do. The remnants of dinner still lingered in the air as Chandler, Layla, Marcus and Armand drifted toward the bar. Layla softly kissed Aiden's forehead and gave him to his nursemaid before she carried him off to bed. Above the castle, fireworks exploded in a symphony of red and green, their sharp cracks reverberating through the night. Chandler tilted his head back, watching the bursts scatter like shrapnel. The sight once held a childlike wonder for him, but now, the cacophony summoned memories of battle, flashes of chaos, the scent of blood thick in the air. He forced himself to admire the display, though the enchantment had long since faded. Layla nudged his side. Their eyes met, her knowing smile flickering in the gaslight. Her dark red gown shimmered like molten silk with each movement, layered textures shifting in the glow. Sun tattoos, marks of her Solaran bloodline, smoldered against her skin. Chestnut waves spilled over her shoulders, framing warm brown eyes ablaze with fierce, unyielding affection. His heart swelled in return, meeting her gaze with equal admiration. Armand signaled for a round of scotch, but Layla raised a hand in refusal. None for me, she said, resting a palm against her stomach. One on the way. Armand's brow lifted. Ah, I was not aware. The prince failed to inform me. Chandler exhaled a chuckle. It's recent. Still sinking in, honestly. We haven't told many, she's early yet. Nothing official, Layla added. We will soon, though. Armand lifted his glass in a small toast. Then congratulations. May your family thrive. Thank you, Chandler murmured. I hope so. A heavy arm slung across Chandler's shoulders, nearly knocking him off balance. Marcus grinned down at him, his hulking frame pressing all his weight onto his friend. Can you believe this shithead raising kids? Marcus said, his voice thick with amusement. I can't wait to meet my godson, or goddaughter, I suppose. Either way, I fully intend to corrupt them. Layla rolled her eyes, but her lips twitched with a smile. In all seriousness, Marcus continued, raising his glass as he rolled off Chandler and stood next to Armand. Congratulations, you two. This calls for more drinks, to the shithead, his beautiful wife, and their soon-to-be menace of a child. Armand took a sip of his scotch, only to snort it violently through his nose at the proclamation. He coughed, hacking into his napkin, while Marcus thumped him on the back, only worsening the sputtering fit. Chandler buried his face in Layla's neck to stifle his laughter, his shoulders trembling with barely contained amusement. Armand, finally recovering, wiped his mouth with a sigh, and shot Marcus a look of long-suffering patience. "You are insufferable," Marcus beamed, "and yet you continue to grace us with your presence." Armand shook his head, though a smirk betrayed his feigned irritation. A pause, a gaze shifted behind him, then he huffed a breath of air. "My friends, I would stay and endure more of this nonsense, but my injuries demand rest. I bid you good night." He inclined his head in farewell and walked off, his cane tapping steadily against the marble floor as he disappeared into the ballroom's gilded halls. Layla exhaled a laugh. "Radiant Sun, did you see his face?" Chandler smirked but tempered his amusement. "Give him a break. He's got a lot weighing on him. He lost much during the rebellion, not just his eye. Scars like that never really heal." Layla's expression softened. "How did he lose it, I wonder?" Marcus clapped his hands together. "Not our business. Now, more drinks." They drank and laughed deep into the night, the once crowded ballroom thinning until only the echoes of their revelry remained. Gaslight flickered in half-drained glasses, the air rich with the mingling scents of alcohol and perfume. The distant melody of a string quartet carried through the corridors, weaving a spell of intoxicated merriment. And yet, something stirred beyond the revelry. A shadow slid along the balcony, its presence subtle, fleeting. Chandler's gaze flicked upward, his fingers tightening around his glass. A figure stood there, half shrouded in darkness. He blinked, trying to discern their features, but the gaslight failed to reach them. Neither Layla nor Marcus noticed, too caught up in their bickering over some triviality. Chandler set his glass down and stepped onto the balcony. The cool night air bit at his skin. He glanced around, nothing. Yet a lingering unease coiled in his gut. His mind toyed with possibilities, an assassin, a spy, or maybe just a figment of his exhaustion. He lit a cigarette, inhaling deep, letting the smoke curl through his lungs. It steadied him. Then, a whisper of movement. He looked up. The shadow remained, watching. A woman materialized from the darkness, perched atop a buttress. Moonlight caught the green fabric of her fitted coat, the feathered brim of her hat, and the long drape of her cloak. But it was the mask that held him still, a porcelain visage painted in the likeness of a sparrow, green eyes guarded yet knowing. "Good evening, Prince Chandler." Her accent was thick, unmistakably Mystrian. His fingers tensed around the cigarette. "Do you need something? I bring a warning." She tilted her head as if weighing her words. "Darkness stirs. An attack is imminent. Follow the lights beckon." His chest tightened. "How soon?" She opened her mouth to answer, then froze, her head jerking sharply to the side. A curse hissed from her lips in Mystrian. "I cannot speak further," she said, urgency bleeding into her tone. "Very soon." Then she was gone, vanishing into the night as swiftly as she had appeared. Chandler stood rooted in place, her words sinking into him like ice. His instincts screamed at him to chase, to demand more, but he knew better. She had given what little she could. The weight of unseen eyes prickled at his senses. Marcus materialized at his side, his presence grounding. "Sharing is caring," he said, plucking the cigarette from Chandler's hand and taking a drag. Layla joined them, though she stood away from the smoke. The night resumed its laughter, its drinking, its revelry. Yet beneath it, something restless coiled in Chandler's gut, a silent whisper of coming change. For now, he let it fade, drowning in the fleeting comfort of the moment. The Colosseum trembled as Chandler's opponent hit the dirt, a cloud of dust erupting from the impact. The crowd roared, their cheers rolling through the arena like a crashing tide. Chandler barely heard them. His chest rose and fell with each measured breath as he stepped forward, extending a hand to the fallen warrior, a young Ebon-Reach soldier who had fought with undeniable skill. "Well fought," Chandler said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. The soldier hesitated, then clasped Chandler's hand, his grip firm despite his loss. A nod passed between them, respect given, respect earned. Then, with a last glance, they parted. Chandler strode toward the sidelines, where Marcus lounged among the other combatants. The man greeted him with a sharp slap on the shoulder. "Good job, shithead." Chandler smirked and smacked him back, earning a laugh. Yeah, he said, shaking his head. "You'll eat those words later." The two settled in, watching the remaining matches unfold. Chandler wiped sweat from his brow, shifting in his tailored military attire. Crimson wool embroidered with gold and silver, the plumed hat perched atop his head a constant reminder of the formalities of the event. It was tradition, spectacle, ceremony. But for Chandler, it was also a proving ground. His name was called again. This time, he faced a veteran, an older warrior, scars carved deep into his skin, eyes sharp with years of battle wisdom. The clash of their blades sent sparks into the air, steel ringing against steel in a rhythm only seasoned fighters understood. Chandler pressed forward, but his opponent met him at every turn, predicting, countering. Still, Chandler adapted, landing a calculated strike across the man's side, a solid hit. And then, a flicker, a shadow moving in the crowd. For the briefest moment, Chandler's focus faltered. His opponent seized the opening, driving him back with brutal efficiency. Chandler barely evaded a finishing strike, rolling away before surging to his feet, his pulse hammering. He silenced his thoughts, recentered himself. This time when he struck, the veteran went down. The Colosseum erupted in cheers. As Chandler left the arena, Marcus stepped in to take his turn. They passed each other, Marcus delivering a firm punch to Chandler's arm. "Take a break," Marcus said, grinning. "I don't want you too tired in the final." Chandler let out a breathless chuckle, rubbing his arm. "I won't be." Yet even as he sat down, his gaze swept back to the stands. He hadn't imagined that shadow. He knew the difference between tricks of the eye and someone, watching. Then he saw her. She perched on a railing that no ordinary spectator could have reached, dark hair shifting in the breeze, her posture relaxed despite the impossible position. Their eyes met. She tilted her head as if amused, and raised a hand in a slow, deliberate wave before vanishing into the crowd. Chandler blinked, his breath catching. A memory, hazy from drink, surfaced. She had spoken to him the night before, whispered something in the dark, but the words were just out of reach. The noise of the Colosseum faded. He hadn't even watched Marcus's match until Marcus dropped onto the bench beside him, shaking his head. "Hey, shithead, you hear what I said?" Chandler tore his gaze from the crowd. "Huh?" Marcus smirked, glancing toward the stands. "I won, dumbass. What's got you so distracted?" Chandler forced a grin. "Don't worry about it, especially since I'm about to kick your ass." Marcus laughed. "You're on." The announcer's voice boomed across the arena, calling them forward for their long-awaited match. The crowd roared, the energy in the air thick with anticipation. They clasped hands once, a moment of silent camaraderie before stepping apart and drawing weapons. Marcus, clad in the armor of his old Colosseum days, unslung his twin axes. Chandler leveled his sword, a sharp grin cutting across his face. Then, Marcus moved. Chandler barely dodged the first swing. He countered, but Marcus evaded, the two circling, testing. Strike, parry, dodge. Chandler had fought Marcus more times than he could count, yet something felt off. Not Marcus himself, his movements were familiar, but something around them, pressing against the edges of his awareness. The shadows thickened. A weight settled in the air, heavy and suffocating. Then, a force slammed into the arena with such violence that the ground cracked beneath them. The impact sent Marcus flying, his body hitting the dirt with a sickening thud. Dust and debris filled the air, the deafening roar of the crowd turning to terrified screams. A figure emerged from the settling darkness. He was impossibly tall, draped in flowing black and purple robes that shimmered like living shadows. A silver mask obscured his face, a skeletal visage, its hollow eye sockets gleaming with an unnatural light. Above it, a crown of twisted silver bones sat atop his head, adorned with intricate carvings of belladonna. A single ruby burned at its center like a baleful eye. Chandler's breath hitched. Fear, cold and absolute, clawed at his spine. The world seemed to hush, the once thundering arena now a void of silence. Even the wind had stilled. Then, the rasp of leather tightening, Lucian flexing his clawed fingers. A faint chime of metal and beads followed as he raised his hand. A scythe materialized, wicked and glistening with unnatural darkness. Without hesitation, he brought it down in a single devastating strike. Chandler barely rolled out of the way. Screams erupted anew, panic spreading through the stands like wildfire. Shadows twisted and took form, zealots appearing as if birthed from the abyss itself. The Colosseum became a battlefield, the metallic ring of clashing weapons joining the chaos. Lucian moved to strike again, but something caught the blow. A slender blade, rapier thin yet unyielding. The woman from the crowd stood before him, a sparrow mask obscuring her face. She staggered and cried under the force of the deflection, catching herself with her blade, her free hand clutching her shoulder. Still, she did not back down. Her voice cut through the chaos. "Lucian, the Dark King. You're supposed to be dead. You cannot touch Prince Chandler. I won't let you." Lucian regarded her, unimpressed. He swung again, but she was already moving, vanishing into the shadows, flickering in and out of existence with unnatural speed. Then he laughed. A sound so cold, so guttural, it sent ice through Chandler's veins. "A woman who knows the shadows like a zealot," Lucian mused, tilting his head. Curious. He lifted his scythe, yet this time he turned toward the royal box. Chandler's stomach lurched as Lucian's blade crashed into the railing, splintering it apart. The impact sent debris flying, and Chandler barely registered his father's body being thrown from his chair. Then, with inhuman grace, Lucian leapt. He landed among the nobles, his presence a black void against the flickering gaslight. A scream rang out. His father's voice. Chandler didn't think. He moved, feet pounding against the fractured earth. His sword gripped tight. The battle had only just begun. Chandler's breath hitched as his gaze landed on the familiar figure shielding a child amidst the chaos. His heart slammed against his ribs. "Layla!" His voice tore from his throat, raw and desperate. He sprinted toward her, pushing past the body strewn across the battlefield. She turned at the sound of his voice, her expression shifting from fierce determination to visible relief. Aidan clung to her, his tiny fingers digging into her tunic, his slight frame racked with sobs. Blood streaked her cheek, though she stood tall and unbroken. Chandler thanked the sun. He cupped her face, his fingers trembling as he traced the dried blood. No wounds, no fractures. The tension that had bound his chest loosened, if only slightly. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, inhaling the familiar scent of her. "Yes, I'm fine," she assured him. "I grabbed Aidan and took cover when that thing appeared, but I won't stand idle. I'm joining Marcus in the arena." He wanted to stop her, to beg her to stay, but he knew better. Layla was not one to cower in the face of battle. He swallowed hard and nodded. "Stay safe, love." She offered a fleeting smile before vanishing into the fray, her dagger flashing as she dispatched a zealot in a single fluid motion. Chandler forced himself to turn back toward the box, where the veritable nightmare unfolded. His stomach twisted. Armand and his father lay sprawled in the wreckage, their bodies marred with crimson. Hunters stood over them, weapons raised, but they were no match for the man looming above them. Lucien. The Dark King rested one boot on his scythe, his shadowed form exuding something unnatural, something wrong. He raised a hand, and from his fingertips, darkness unfurled like a living thing, tendrils lashing out with merciless precision. The hunters barely had time to react before they crumpled, their bodies hitting the ground in eerie silence, lifeless, hollow, like marionettes with their strings cut. Lucien advanced, claws gleaming. Armand struggled, his breath ragged, his body weakened. A single sweeping strike, and a fountain of red sprayed the ground. A banshee scream split the air as Armand collapsed, his body shuddering before stillness claimed him. Tiberius, now defenseless, barely had time to lift his head before Lucien's fingers wrapped around his throat and lifted him effortlessly from the ground. 50 years, Tiberius. Lucien's voice slithered through the air, thick with venom. 50 years of your pathetic kingdom turning its back on me. And did you truly think I wouldn't notice your support for my grandson's little rebellion? Chandler couldn't breathe. His father's fingers clawed at Lucien's grip, his legs kicking against empty air. A strangled rasp escaped Tiberius's lips as he struggled for breath. Lucien leaned in, his grin a skeletal mockery. "Do you have any last words, my king?" Tiberius's lips parted, the words weak but defiant. "You will never win." Lucien's laughter chilled Chandler to the bone. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he sent a surge of darkness crashing into Tiberius's skull. The blast propelled him backward, his body smashing through the remnants of the railing. Chandler barely registered the sickening crunch before his father plummeted, landing with a deafening thud in the arena below. Something inside Chandler shattered. No! He surged forward, but hands seized him. Zealots, silent, implacable, their grips ironclad. He thrashed, the weight of his grief fueling his struggle, but they held firm, their touch colder than death itself. Lucien turned, his black eyes locking onto Chandler with something close to amusement. "Ah, Prince Chandler, what a delight!" The words barely registered before Chandler felt Lucien's claws at the nape of his neck. An icy pressure bore down, sending agony rippling through his spine, his breath coming in short rasps. "I have been watching you for quite some time," Lucien murmured, his breath like frost against Chandler's skin. A new pain ignited within him, hot, searing, like liquid fire flooding his veins. It roared outward from his heart, devouring the cold, burning through every limb. The air around him crackled, sparks danced in his vision, smoke curled in the air, acrid and thick. Lucien wrenched his hand away with a hiss, his fingers smoldering. The zealots recoiled, collapsing as though something unseen had scalded them. Chandler staggered, his breath ragged, his skin ablaze with energy. What in Gehenna just happened? Lucien chuckled, rolling his shoulders. "Your ancient bloodline has awakened." He exhaled as if shaking off the encounter. "No matter. My work here is done." With a flick of his wrist, darkness coiled around him. The zealots obeyed his silent command, vanishing into the mist with him. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. Then, a groan. Chandler spun toward the sound. Armand lay sprawled, his chest heaving, blood seeped through the torn fabric of his shirt, his skin ashen. I'm all right," Armand rasped, his lips twitching into a pained grin. "Takes more than that to kill me." Footsteps thundered up the steps. A young man with windswept blonde hair and a pilot skier burst into the box. "Armand, you son of a bitch." His voice shook between relief and exasperation. "That's twice now you've survived Lucien's death." Armand's grin widened, weak but defiant. "Elliot, what's the crew's status?" Elliot scanned the fallen hunters, his expression grim. 5 casualties. You're the only one still breathing." His gaze shifted to Chandler. "We'll handle this. Go to your father." Chandler needed no further urging. He bolted down the stairs, taking them 2, 3, 4 at a time. The crowd parted as he reached the arena floor, his heart hammering against his ribs. His father lay still, cradled in Layla's arms. Marcus hovered beside them, his jaw set, his eyes dark with grief. Blood soaked through the fabric pressed to Tiberius's wounds, the crimson spreading too fast, too much. Chandler dropped to his knees. Tiberius's dull eyes flickered with recognition. A faint smile ghosted his lips. "My boy." "Shh, it's okay." Chandler's voice broke as he eased his father's head into his lap. "It's going to be okay." Tiberius's fingers trembled as they brushed against Chandler's cheek. "I love you, son." Tears blurred Chandler's vision. "I love you too, father." His father's eyes fluttered shut. His body went still. A sob tore from Chandler's throat. He pressed his forehead to Tiberius's, his breath shuddering as he draped his ceremonial cloak over his father's lifeless form. Marcus's hand found his shoulder, steady, unyielding. Layla's touch followed, silent in its comfort. But nothing could dull the hollow ache inside him. His father was gone. The scent of blood and smoke still lingered in the air as Chandler stood motionless, watching the royal guards lift his father's body from the ground. Smoke rising from the stands as a backdrop. Each movement seemed reverent, slow, a ceremony of finality that carved itself into his mind. Nearby, Layla clung to Aiden, the child now asleep despite the horrors that had unfolded. Marcus stood at her side, his face a mask of restrained grief. They all processed the tragedy in their own way, but Chandler felt detached, as though his body had grown numb, encased in invisible frost. He drifted away from them, his footsteps heavy, his breath shallow. Distance became his refuge, but no matter how far he stepped, the weight pressing against his chest remained. A presence sidled up beside him. The shift in the air snapped him from his spiraling thoughts. Prince Chandler? The voice was low, careful, and wrapped in regret. He turned, eyes narrowing at the woman in the sparrow mask. I'm sorry, she murmured, her words laced with something deeper than mere apology. I tried to stop him, but the Dark King, he still struck down your father. A pang of emotion cracked through Chandler's frozen core, but he smothered it before it could surface. He shook his head. You don't have to apologize. If anything, I owe you my life. That blow you took for me, I could feel it from where I stood. She exhaled a short huff, her breath almost a laugh but edged with exhaustion. It wasn't pleasant, she admitted. I'll be feeling it for days. But it was worth it. There was something about her, something he wasn't sure whether to fear or trust. Who are you? He asked. How did you know he would be here? You can call me Sparrow. The name fell from her lips without hesitation. I've spent the last 4 years tracking the zealots, watching their movements. I knew they'd strike tonight. His brow furrowed. She was a Mystrian, but she wasn't a hunter. At least, she didn't carry herself like one. You're not a witch hunter, are you? Not exactly. Her stance shifted. She straightened, squaring her shoulders as she turned fully toward him. I want to help you, Prince Chandler, but my circumstances complicate things. Right now, the best aid I can offer is a direction. She hesitated, then continued. The Sword of Ashes lies hidden within a long-forgotten ruin in the Solaran Desert. With it, your light abilities will awaken to their full strength. Only then will I be able to offer more. A flicker of movement caught her attention, and her focus shifted past him. Chandler turned in time to see Armand entering the arena, his small entourage of hunters trailing behind him. Someone had dressed his wounds, but the fire in his sapphire eye remained undimmed. When Chandler turned back, Sparrow was gone. No trace of her lingered, no whisper of movement, nothing to show she had ever been standing there. He searched the shadows, but she had vanished into them, as though she had never been there at all. He clenched his jaw. He had more questions, but they would have to wait. Despite her secrecy, something in his gut told him he could trust her, at least for now. Armand approached, surveying the devastation with a practiced eye. The weight of the night pressed against him, but he carried it well, exhaling a slow breath as he turned his gaze toward Chandler. This cannot stand. His voice was low, edged with something dark. Lucien must be found and dealt with, but his survival, it defies reason. His fingers curled into a fist. I burned his body, buried the ashes myself. I made certain of it. A pause. I must have overlooked something. I should have known. Chandler frowned. What are you saying? Armand's expression darkened, the past weighing heavy in his single eye. Lucien woke the slumbering goddess. She whispered to him in his dreams, and in return for his devotion, she gave him power, made him the Dark King. Her magic sustains him. His voice dropped lower, almost to himself. There must have been something I missed when the rebellion broke out. Some link, something holding him to this world. Silence settled between them, heavy and unspoken. Then Armand's gaze sharpened. The lunar opal, an ancient artifact. The light-wielding faction of your bloodline once used it. If Lucien and the goddess corrupted it, that could explain his resurrection. The same faction that founded Ebonreach? Chandler asked. Armand nodded. If we find the opal and sever his hold, we might finally end him. Chandler exhaled, his thoughts racing. What do you know about the Sword of Ashes? Won't it help unlock my powers? Armand stiffened, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Where did you hear about that? Chandler hesitated, unwilling to betray Sparrow's confidence. Whispers, folklore. I thought it was a myth, until tonight. Armand considered, then nodded. If it's real, retrieving it should be your first priority. Meanwhile, I'll hunt down the opal. It's a solid plan, Chandler admitted. We need to be ahead of Lucien this time. Armand gave a humorless chuckle. Lucien is always ahead of us, but if we strip away his power, he'll have nowhere to run. A fresh voice cut through the conversation. You're not going without me. Chandler turned to find Layla stepping forward, her eyes burning with determination. He shifted, instinctively reaching for her arm. Layla, the desert is dangerous. I won't endanger you and the Chi. Chandler, you dork, I'm your wife. You're not doing this without me. He lifted his hands in surrender. That fire in her eyes, he loved it every time. Marcus grinned. Guess that means I'm in too. Someone's got to keep this shithead in line. Chandler rubbed the back of his neck. Do you have to call me that? Marcus's laugh was rich, velvety. Yup. Warmth settled in Chandler's chest. For the first time since his father fell, the weight on his shoulders felt just a little lighter. All right, he said, nodding. We leave at dawn.